Hi, my name is Allyson Lauer, and today I'm going to be talking about Germany. And so I chose Germany for my presentation because I've actually been to Germany and I got to experience what the schools are like in Germany. So I stayed with the host family for 2 weeks, and so I got to go to school with her and sit in classes and stuff like that. So, a little background and history first. So, the public education began in 1763 when Frederick the Great, which is pictured in this picture, mandated the regular public education. But now, so the World War that happened, World War One and Two had a big impact on their education systems, and so the World War were against the Allies and the Central Powers, which included Germany, had that big impact, like I said. And so some of the ways that it was impacted, so the war reshaped the structure and how the subjects were taught, and they kind of wanted to change how the teachers were teaching, so like different teaching methods. And they started to decrease the youth years that were required for like secondary school and stuff like that, and they started to decrease the time in school. And during this time, it seemed like that the intellect was not as highly valued in the students because they received little homework and acted like they didn't care as much. And so they started to teach more history too, instead of things like religion and stuff like that. But so today in Germany there are 16 states, and they have a federation, and both of those are in charge of the education system. So now the school structure. So I'm going to start off with the pre-primary, which is called the Vorschule. So now for all of the school structures, whether it be the pre-primary, elementary, or secondary, there is no homeschooling in Germany. I read on a couple websites that it's illegal, but it isn't. They do not have homeschooling. And so the pre-primary, it's voluntary, so you can decide if you want to send your children to school. And so the pre-primary focuses on children that are from the ages 3 to 6 years old. And when they are in this pre-primary, they focus on working on social skills, motor movement skills, and personal development by using experiences from the past and their present, like so being with other children in the classroom and learning how to play and stuff like that. And so then they start to dip their toes into the basic subject areas like math and stuff like that. But now the pre-primary school is not free, so you have to pay, whether it be a public or private place. And so the people that run these organizations, they're run by organizations or just other individuals that are volunteering to do it. But so there are 4 types. So there's kindergarten, which is the most common and the most traditional form of early childhood education. And so it's from average 2 to 6 years old, and all of these develop language skills, but that's like what they mainly focus on. And then there's the Schulkindergarten. So this even goes to children that pass 6 years old. So it's kind of just for the ones who aren't really ready to move on to elementary or primary education. So they're kind of less developed, or they're not just fully ready. And then there's Vorklassen, which is mainly focuses on students that are 5 years old, and it's kind of a school, or the pre-primary school that gets them ready to transition into that elementary school. And then there's a Sonderkindergarten, which is for children that have physical, mental, or emotional disabilities. Okay, so now the primary and elementary schools. Now this is called the Grundschule, and so this requires that students learn the basic knowledge skills that are going to help prepare them for the future and for their future learning. And so the average age is from 6 to 10. And children are normally sent to the Grundschules that their district is in. And so the districts that they live in have to accept those children. But if those students were to try to go to elementary school or primary school that's out of their district, that school does not have to accept them. And so now these schools, they aim to focus on their individual talents while building that basic knowledge and skills that they're going to need for their future, and especially when they get into the lower and upper secondary schools. And so now in the primary and elementary, they focus on subjects that are like German, math, foreign language, and especially literacy, religion, history, and computer skills. And so they have no examinations for this. The teachers kind of just do self-evaluations of each student, and those evaluations help the teacher and with the parents help figure out if that student is ready to move on to the secondary schools, or if not, then they're just held back for a little bit. Okay, so now the school structure, which is the high schools. So now the high schools are more set up like our colleges here in America, where they have the classes that they are in aren't set every day or at the same time. So they could have, like, let's say math like 3 days a week and 2 days a week. It kind of just depends on the schedule. And they also have a thing called grosse pauses, which is kind of just a really long break. Could be like a lunch break that they have, or just any time during their schedule. And so for the high schools, they have upper and lower. And so the lower is for the ages 10 to 15, so your first few years of secondary school. And then the upper secondary school is kind of just your last few years. And so now there are different types. I only listed 4 of them, but there are a few more out there, but I just did the most common ones. And so there's a Hauptschule, which is from grades 5 to 9 or 10, kind of just depends on the Hauptschule. And then this is for less academic students, and the subjects that they teach are, they mainly focus on German, English or French, math, economics, computer science, but the Hauptschules especially focus on vocational training, because the Hauptschule prepares them for vocational school. And so the next one is called Realschule, and this is for grades 5 to 10. It's the most common form, and this is kind of for mid-level students, and it helps prepare them for mid-level jobs like trade and industry jobs. And so the subjects that they teach are, they have general classes, so it's kind of like the Hauptschule, like German, English, and French, computer classes, and stuff like that. And so the next one is Gesamtschule. They don't have this in all of the states, and like I said before, Germany has 16 states. And combines all different types of education for grades 5 to 10. So they teach, depending on the each student's level of knowledge. So they have like German, math, and foreign languages. And it's kind of like our public schools here. And so the Gymnasium, which is the highest form of academics, and it's for grades 5 to 13, and it's the most valued because you can only go to universities if you go to the Gymnasium and pass the Abitur test, which they have. But the Gymnasium in the future offers the best job opportunities, and so they have to take some basic courses like the math and science, history and German and English, but they also have to take some advanced courses, and these advanced courses that they have to take just have more lessons, and the subject material or matter that they have is just a lot harder than regular classes. And so, yeah, like I said, if they go to the Gymnasium, they have the opportunity, if they pass the Abitur test, to go to a university or get a degree. And then here's kind of a picture of like one of the classes. So like, yeah, they have German, like, for example, 3 times in the morning, and then on Fridays they have it later in the day. So it kind of just depends on the student's school. And so then here are 2 pictures that I have from the school that I went to. I went to Gymnasium, and so my host family's daughter was in 11th grade there, and so this is what the entrance looked like, and there's just like a classroom. Okay, so now on to the school structure for universities. So more than 30% of students end up going to a university. It's a lot harder, obviously, to get into with the Abitur test, but there are really low fees for students when they go here, so they kind of just have to pay for some books and stuff. But so the requirements that are needed, so after graduating grade 12 or 13 from the Gymnasium, like I said, you have to pass the Abitur test, and so having that degree grant will get you into the university. So I listed some examples, and here are 2 pictures actually that I took of the Universität in Freiburg. We just went around walking for a day, so it was super cool. So now there are also vocational schools, which are very popular in Germany, and this, it's a vocational or a dual education system, and so the dual system and vocational helps prepare students for hands-on training with classroom learning and with cooperations from like an actual organization to give those students the experience for a deep knowledge of vocational trades. So yeah, the dual system basically just has students go to school in actual classrooms, so they're still learning stuff while experiencing the actual vocation out in a workplace. So now there are some different types of examples. There's the Berufsfachschule, which is a full-time vocational school, and so it's about 2 to 3 years and requires a low secondary leaving certificate from a Hauptschule or a Realschule, and this school focuses on multiple specific occupations. And then the Berufsschule is 2 to 3 years, and it's the part-time vocational school, leads to vocational qualification. And so the subjects that are taught are kind of just general vocational subjects that you need to know within the dual system. And to enter this, you have to have just a contract with the dual system. And then the Fachschule is 1 to 3 years it lasts, and it's continuous in-depth trade and technical vocational training. And then you have to have a Berufsschule qualification or a Realschule certificate, or just a vocational qualification to enter the Fachschule. So now some of the discipline rules for students. So it's illegal to use physical punishment, no matter what the instance is, and there's no strict disciplinary rules really in the schools, whether it be with their behavior or just in general, because they want to address the harm and move away from the stricter punishments. But so that means they focus on like manners and just being respectful of their peers and their teachers. And then so the classroom settings kind of are more of an open and calm atmosphere, because the teacher is able to make his or her own set of rules up for in the classrooms. And so some more on that. Yeah, like I said, they create their own certain rules, but they hold their students accountable for superior performances in school. So making sure that they do turn in their homework and they do it to their best, the best of their abilities. But Germans in general, whether it be in schools or just all around, are kind of more they're well disciplined and they're very hardworking. And in school, this is partly because the grading system is a lot harder, but the teachers will straight up tell the students if they are wrong or not. Okay, so some of the nationally mandated exams and certificates. So just a few of the exams that I found, like I mentioned earlier, the Abitur, the one when you take after you graduate the gymnasium. So yeah, this after they finish grade 12 or 13, they're allowed to take this test. It's not mandatory, but so that examination is needed for them to get to the university. And so this test, when they take it, it includes 2 advanced subjects. So it could be German, English, math, and then they also have to choose, there's like 3 type of clusters that have a group of subjects, and so the student, depending on his or her interest, they can choose a certain cluster. And then another exam that is held in Germany that's kind of newer is the AATG exam. And so this is the national German exam, and it awards students that are higher and have more success from levels 2 to 4. So now some of the certificates. So then the school leaving certificates, you just get the certificate after you leave the school. And then there's the Hauptschule certificate, which you receive after you complete 9th grade at the Gesamtschule. And then the Fachhochschulreife is for vocational and secondary education admission into higher education. And then the Mittelreife, you can receive this after grade 10, and it's a final degree in the Realschule, and you need this to get into vocational education. Then there's the Hauptschulabschluss, which you receive after grade 8 and can attend any vocational schools. And so now with the nationally mandated exams, so these exams are just standardized tests that kind of help the teachers see the progress of the student, and gives feedback to them to show what they know. But not all students have to take these exams or get these certain certificates. Kind of just depends on what school they're in and want to go to. And so they're not really penalized for poor performances. The teachers and the students aren't. If they don't pass, they don't pass and just have to stay or just don't do anything about it. So yeah, the subjects kind of for each test and certificate that are required just depends on what exam and certificate you're taking or going for. But it has like the basic subjects like math, reading, writing, and foreign language standards. And so the accountability, they're held accountable by the Institute for Quality Development in Education, which is the IQB, sorry. And this organization kind of just supports the states, the 16 states, in developing the overall education, and monitors how well the standards are being implemented. And so if a child doesn't meet the standards that are set, he or she will just be held back. So yeah. Okay, so now the frequency. Like I said, not all students need to take these or are required to, but if you go to the university and if you want to go to a university, the abitur is required. And then, yeah, so you just have to, if you want to go to vocational school, you have to get those certain certificates. Okay, so now the curriculum. So the material is laid out in the curriculum that's set by the school in the states. So one thing I thought, which was really weird when I went to visit, there were no lockers, so the materials that they needed, they had to have backpacks because they just all carried backpacks, or carried their stuff in their backpacks, sorry. And so the Ministries of Education and Cultural Affairs and the Lander lay out the education in the curriculums. So this kind of deals with the course objectives and the teaching methods which teachers are supposed to implement. Kind of just depends on each state because they're allowed to create their own, and they're just so different. And so the teachers are able to decide what textbooks from the list of approved books by the ministry. And so, like for an example, students have to read a Tag book, Der Anne Frank, and they have to read books about the Holocaust. Like those are some of the two that are just mandated that they have to learn about. Okay, so now some of the standards. So the similar standards, students have to begin at 6 years old, and it's split in the beginning based on their level of knowledge. And so the standard course load, kind of just learning German, English, math, and science, and stuff like that. And not a lot of the schools offer after-school activities or physical education or music or art. There are a few private schools in Germany, and I would say those private schools over the public schools offer these things more than the public schools. But yeah, so the states get to decide what standards are set in stone, but the private schools have more opportunities, like I said. So yeah. So now the grading system. So in America, we base our grades off of like an A, B, so letter grades, and percentages wise. But in Germany, that's not how they do it. They do it based on they go from sehr gut to nicht messbar. So it's kind of, you can see, I don't know if you can see, but this picture has kind of points. So like a 5 in general is like the highest, so it's sehr gut, which means very good. So that student is performing to the best of their abilities and they're doing good on their homework and stuff like that. And so then the nicht messbar which would be like a 1 or 0, means that their work or performance is not really measurable. So it is very different than our grading system in America. And so they have a nationwide curriculum with certain grades that show their knowledge and capabilities. So the states still want to maintain their own education curriculum, so they're still trying to enforce that. Okay, so finance. So the primary source of funding for public and private is mainly from the government and the districts, but it's much less of a federal education control. And so private and public schools can receive funds, but public schools have to hold certain state issue reports and exams. And so, yeah, so they spend the same amount of money on education as private schools, but private funds are subsidized by the state, getting to majority of the funds from the state, like I said, while having to pay a certain amount of fees, but those fees are relatively low, and there really aren't a lot of private schools. Some of them are independent, and so really don't have to have those certain mandated rules that are set by the government, but those private schools can set their own curriculum. And so teacher salaries, so teachers in Germany, if they teach from 15 to 25 years, they get the higher they get a higher pay and higher salary, but since all the teachers are professionals, their pay isn't based on their performance. And so for middle school, the average is 42,000 euros to 57,000 euros, and then on average, high school is about 53,730 euros. Okay, so parental support. So the high versus low trust. So the teachers that are in Germany are professionals, and they have a high trust because of their importance in Germany. And so they're known as being prestige in the education systems. Yeah, so the teachers are trusted and very highly respected by other colleagues, by students, and by other peers in general. And so, in general, students are really focused and determined when it comes to their schooling and their performance. And so, classrooms have a trusting yet open environment, and in the students' schooling, the parents are involved with their academic life, making sure they're pushing them to do their best and perform to the best of their abilities. And then here's my works cited. Thank you for listening.